Good morning, everybody. It's delightful to see so many people here interested in apprenticeships. And I'm really glad that Noel finished up his remarks by saying that apprenticeships is the new thing that we have to focus on. When I came into workforce development 20 years ago out of economic development, it was a very different field. It was a field in which there was a lot of attention basically to trying to figure out what were the skill sets that were necessary to fill jobs, but not with a lot of information about what the businesses needed. And that has evolved as we develop more sectoral work and industry partnerships to an understanding that without knowing deeply about what industry needs, it's really impossible to make smart investments in workforce development. And the logical extension of that, of course, is that it required that businesses become more engaged in that talent supply chain, that they participate with other businesses in understanding what needed to happen, what were the changes going on in industry, and how they could communicate the competencies and skill sets that were necessary for the workers. And it was important that they communicated that information to the training providers, community colleges, post-secondary schools, career and tech ed schools. So that was a real step forward because businesses came together to do that. And around the country now, sector skills partnership is a very important part and is now a part of the federal legislation that requires it to happen. But apprenticeship, as we've learned just from this morning, takes it to a whole nother level, right? It's not just an understanding of what needs to happen and communicating it outward. Apprenticeship is about actually being a partner with the workforce system, with community colleges, in developing a whole program around how you bring somebody on board and educate them through a curriculum that you have helped design and that fills your needs and that has a standard that could work across industries as well. So what we've seen, that surge in interest has been very important evolution of workforce development. And it's happened because of the work of businesses, of workforce development folks, of unions. And this surge in interest is incredibly important to what's happening today and why we're having this conference. I also think that interest helps us to think about the two of the three challenges that Andy mentioned this morning that we have to address. And that is, how do we get more businesses engaged in this very challenging effort to really partner with a complex set of other stakeholders and develop apprenticeships that have real meaning? How do we make sure that it's meaningful to the student and to the industry? How do we convince educators to partner with us? And this morning, fortunately, we have a set of business leaders and union leaders on stage to talk to us about their experiences in investing in apprenticeships and developing them for their companies. Let me start off by introducing the panel, and then we're going to have some questions for them to respond to. To my right, Deb Lindner, the Human Resources Manager for Precor, a fitness equipment manufacturer. To her right, Tom Krieger, who was originally going to be here, had a death in the family. He couldn't be here with us this morning. So Art Lujan has come. Art is the Special Assistant to the President of the North America's Building Trades Unions. Thanks for being here and pinch hitting, Art. Appreciate that. Stacey Rose, to his right, Senior Human Resources and Labor Relations Manager for Kroger Manufacturing Division of the Kroger Company. Thank you. And Mark Wagner, Vice President of Learning for the Hartford. Thank you so much for being here with us this morning, all of you. So let me start with you, Deb. Precor obviously is a small company, and I don't know how many employees it has, but you can probably help me out with that. So tell me why you made such a huge commitment to apprenticeships.
Well, we moved our location back in 2009 from California to Los Angeles, and we currently have less than 90 employees. And when we moved, we had over 2,000 applicants for 20 jobs. Today, I may get 50 and only maybe 10% are qualified. Our core competencies, from tube bending, welding, robotic manual, powder coating, upholstery, it's difficult. And when you're a small employer, you need to find those skilled workers, because when you're down 5 or 6, your labor, you don't get the product out the door. So I became very involved and said, what can I do to build my pipeline? And apprenticeships was the model that made sense.
And how's that working out?
Fantastic. We have, besides apprenticeships, we also have interns from, for the engineering side. But at the same respect, it is building the pipeline. We're able to teach them in-house and grow them to where we want them to be successful.
And when you were developing the apprenticeship for Precor, who were the partners that you worked with, and how did they help you out with that?
In 2015, the GAP, it's called Guilford Apprenticeship Partners. It was 5 to 6 employers that started. Unfortunately, one had to leave because they unfortunately had to close their doors. But we were small to medium size. It was a group of collective leaders in the community that got together and said, we all have the same issue. We can't find skilled workers. So therefore, formed the GAP partnership.
Great.
And from that, we partnered, of course, with the local Guilford Workforce Board. We partnered with the Guilford schools. And then, of course, with the economic development, your chamber, as well as North Carolina State and the Department of Commerce, where the apprenticeship program is based.
And who's your education partner with these apprenticeships?
Our community college, Guilford Technical Community College.
Okay, now had they been doing apprenticeships before, or was this something you were bringing them brand new?
To my knowledge, I do not believe they were doing it, so this was new to them.
Great, great. I'll have some more questions about
Okay,
that.
thank you.
Art, building trades have been doing apprenticeships for many, many years. But one of the challenges that we're talking about here this morning is about diversification of the candidates that come into apprenticeships. And I know that you're doing some important work in that area. Can you talk a little bit about, first of all, why unions have always believed that apprenticeships are incredibly important to the success of their worker and the businesses that they work for, and what you're doing to diversify the talent pool?
Thank you. You're absolutely correct, and the Department of Labor refers to the construction industry's registered apprenticeship system as a mature system, because many of our programs have been around 100 years or more. And early on, it was determined through the collective bargaining process that in order to develop a skilled workforce, that the registered apprenticeship system would be the way to do it. And they determined that in order to pay for that, to share the cost burden, is that cents per hour would be contributed on behalf of all the hours worked by the individuals, so that in essence, the previous generation was paying for the current generation's training. And that system has been very effective, and it has evolved over the years to the adapting of the different technology that's involved in the industry. And today we have 1,600 training facilities, 20,000 certified instructors, with agreements of 70,000 employers. And we're investing $1 billion a year, $1 billion every year, non-federally subsidized. That's all investment from the industry. The only training program that is larger is the U.S. military. And again, we continue to adapt with technology and with continuing education. So we have state-of-the-art facilities. In fact, I just visited one in Pennsylvania where the plumbing and pipe fitting industry have invested $20 million into a facility. And that's based on the amount of work that is coming up in the future through the Ohio Valley. So what we're doing is creating tremendous opportunities going forward. And there's a commitment on the part of all of the building trades international presidents, of which there's 14, to diversify the workforce, targeting communities of color, women, transitioning veterans, and returning citizens. We knew before we went into the depression in the construction industry over the last several years that we had an aging skilled workforce and that we really needed to strengthen the workforce development pipelines in different communities. But we went into this depression and there was no opportunities. We weren't taking people in to the apprenticeship system because we only take in what we need. But coming out, there is pent-up demand so that we have demand across the country. And so we're partnering with community-based organizations, community colleges, now we're going into the high schools, to make folks aware of the opportunities, what our standards are, so that those organizations can assist us in the recruitment and assessment of individuals. And our programs are anywhere from 3 to 5 years, depending on the trade. We have articulation agreements in place with community colleges, so that's earn while you're learning, getting college degrees, which we have to get through to the parents of their children, that there are opportunities. You may not necessarily need a 4-year degree, but there's tremendous career opportunities. And we've probably been the best kept secret, but there is demand, and we're targeting those communities in order to diversify the workforce. And Noel, I hope in Denver that you reach out to the construction industry because there's tremendous demand there. In fact, the school system has approached us to put in place our what we call multi-craft core curriculum that we're using in different high school districts around the country. So Noel, I hope you bring the construction industry in.
When your presidents talk about the challenges of diversification, what are some of the issues that you've learned how to address, or that you are addressing in terms of recruiting a more diverse population?
Well, I think first and foremost, we have to help our partners understand what the requirements are for each of the programs, that you have to be drug-free, 9th grade math and reading comprehension, reliable transportation is absolutely critical, the ability to show up on time and go to school, which is difficult because you go to school in the evening or on weekends. So develop a better understanding of what the requirements are, but what are the career opportunities. And we don't talk about jobs. These are middle-class career opportunities. And once we begin to break down some of those barriers, we've become very successful. But it's really strengthening the workforce pipeline and connecting all the pieces together to make sure that it's operating effectively and efficiently.
So obviously, to get into some of these trades, there's a test involved. And so people have developed pre-apprenticeship models to try to prepare people to pass those tests. Is that something that you guys are looking at too?
We developed, again, what I indicated earlier, the multi-craft core curriculum that was developed by the national training directors so that there are some standards in the curriculum that's being used. And we referred to those programs as apprenticeship readiness programs, and now we have over 100 of them around the country. 80% of the graduates of those programs are from communities of color. 25% are female, which in the construction industry, we're supposed to be at 6.9%, and we're at 3%. So if we're getting 25% of the graduates out of those apprenticeship readiness programs, we recognize that's one way of ensuring that we're getting women into our apprenticeship programs. And then we form strategic alliances with folks like Chicago Women in the Trades, Oregon Tradeswomen. In fact, even the National Governors Association has put out some great marketing material that we're using. But we recognize that we can't do it on our own, that we need those community partners in order for us to ensure the success of those programs. But we have over 100, and going forward, there's more and more interest in developing those and as a way of introducing the community and the community residents to the registered apprenticeship system.
Great, that's great. Stacey, so when people think about Kroger's, they think about a supermarket, right? They don't think about it as a manufacturing company, but your apprentices are in manufacturing because Kroger manufactures a lot of equipment. So why did Kroger take this approach to developing its talent for the future?
Sure. Well, I think you touched on the first obstacle that we normally run into when we're talking about careers in manufacturing is, first of all, nobody seems to realize that Kroger even has a manufacturing division. Everyone thinks of the stores and the various banners that we have, but we do have a division of Kroger, which is about 8,500 employees. We have 36 manufacturing facilities throughout the U.S. And even though we're very much in infancy stage, as I like to call it, with our apprenticeship program, we face the same challenges large companies and small companies alike have been facing for several years now. And really that came from, an outcry from our HR leaders in our manufacturing plants about the inability to attract and retain that skilled talent. We mainly heard from, our folks about the maintenance department and the very highly skilled positions, and some of our plants were just unable to fill them or keep them. And so we got tired of infighting and basically, in the communities we are in, different organizations and corporations just basically cherry picked from each other all the time. And so we recognize the need to do something better and really talk about how we can build those internal pipelines of talent and develop our current associates into those skilled positions, and then maybe start the outreach into the high schools and start developing an external to internal pipeline. So that really began about 2 years ago.
So tell us about some of the challenges that you faced in the beginning stages in maybe convincing leadership that you should go to an apprenticeship model, or in developing the curriculum. What does a business have to think about when they think about making a big shift, a pivot, you might say, into apprenticeships?
Well, I think Noel actually touched on it as well, and what we learned, and granted, I'm in HR and labor relations, I knew next to zero about apprenticeships when we started down this road. I developed a small task force within manufacturing of some of our HR leaders and engineering leaders to kind of address the issues that we were having. And we realized fairly quickly through some research that we wanted an apprenticeship program, and that we wanted it to be a manufacturing-wide apprenticeship program, because we had a few pockets of success with various programs in a few of our plants, and we wanted to be able to duplicate that everywhere. So really the crucial point for us and the turning point, I think, in really getting the ball rolling was our partnership with the Department of Labor and the Office of Apprenticeship. Really started educating us on what the apprenticeship program could do for us as a corporation, which then enabled us to go back to our leadership and start talking about what they wanted to hear, which was the return on investment, what the impact could be to the bottom line. I think that was the thing that really opened the door and started us having serious conversations with the folks that we needed to be talking to in our organization. And the other part of that is talking about the social impact, because our company is, we have a culture of, social impact, and I think being able to talk about, the life-changing careers that we could help our current associates, but also, going out into the communities where we're located and really creating partnerships within those communities. It was, it got the passion going, and I think without the passion for it, the program wouldn't have gone as far as it did. So I think the biggest struggle we had in the beginning, to answer your question, was understanding who our partners could be, who we could reach out to in the community, whether it was the Department of Labor, the workforce boards, or the schools, the local community colleges, organizations like Lyft and other organizations and the labor unions that we work with in our plants, and building, a network of support for our plants as they put these programs together. I think that was our biggest challenge.
Did you put any of your current manufacturing employees through the apprenticeship program?
Yes, we did.
Oh, okay.
And so, one thing we did when we wanted a manufacturing-wide program, but we also wanted to give each of our facilities the autonomy to build their program as, so that it would work for them. So, we didn't really dictate to them, you're going, whether you should hire externally for these positions or, choose, a current associate. We have a good mixture, I think. So most, I would say probably about 60 to 70% of the apprentices we have came from our current associates.
Wow.
So it was basically, most of our programs so far have been in the maintenance field, so it was basically somebody in the production side that, had a propensity and always kind of wanted to do more. So they've taken those production associates and put them into the maintenance program. And even some of our current maintenance associates who were newer or younger that needed some skills development were actually accepted into the program.
That's great. That's interesting. I have some more questions in that area, but let me get to Mark. So building trades, manufacturing, very traditional apprenticeship, areas of apprenticeship,
Right.
but claims adjusting, not so much.
No.
So tell us, Mark, about why the Hartford decided to move in that direction to develop apprenticeships in financial services.
As long as I can ask a question. So can I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay. So my favorite question. So how many of you went to school for insurance? There's my problem, Fred. And, it's been a problem for insurance for a long time. How do you get the talent you need if you really don't have it in the school system? And people don't even understand, what you do. And for many years, I think the insurance industry was happy enough to say, hey, you're a biology major, hey, you're a political science major, come try insurance and see what happens. And that worked for a while. It's starting not to work as well as it used to. A lot of people want to go into the field that they studied for. So we had to do something. And, our jobs aren't going away anytime soon, especially in the claims area. Usually the claims area is the biggest part of an insurance company. And there's hundreds of thousands of people in the claims organizations. And, even some of the losses are going in the wrong direction. Distracted driving is a huge issue for us now. Climate change isn't exactly making things any safer from a business or a housing perspective. So, it was incumbent upon us to figure out different ways to attract talent. And we thought one of the best ways to attract talent is start apprenticeships, go into the community colleges, start a curriculum around insurance, get people in the door to learn about the job, and start doing the job from the get-go. And I think one of the biggest things that helped us come to that decision is the technology has gotten so good around performance support, decision support, and helping a person do their job right in that moment when they need it. I was a claims person, started 23 years old, and I didn't have a lot of performance support. It was always expected that I had to figure out how to do it in the best way possible and get the claim handled. Today, we have systems where in 2 clicks they can get information about the latest medical test or anything they need to do to handle a lawsuit, or potentially figure out the square footage of the side of a building to rebuild it. So we think apprenticeships are the way to go there.
So traditionally, you were recruiting folks with a 4-year degree.
Correct.
Right. So, and now this is not. So tell us a little bit about that particular transition that you've made with your community college partners.
Oh, I mean, when I brought up to my company the idea of doing apprenticeships, it was a little bit of heresy. To them it was like, what do you mean we're not going to hire four-year degreed people? We need decision makers, and this is really not going to be something that we're embracing. And as we talked through, well, what if the typical student didn't think, and I don't know if you know our icon, it's Larry the Stag. We actually did focus groups with some of the students and asked them, do you know our, Larry the Stag? And they were like, do you compete with Bass Pro Shops, or, are you Gander Mountain? And, we felt that it was about time to introduce young adults to, here's the insurance industry, here are the jobs that are available, and, here's the technology that you get to use in insurance right, at the community college level or right at the high school graduation level.
And tell us about how the community colleges felt about you guys working with them and sort of taking their graduates and putting them to work before they actually had finished their degree.
Well, they were excited. I can't say they weren't excited. They needed a lot of help with, so tell us what they need to learn, from an insurance perspective. And, because we've always taken the burden on teaching people everything they needed to know in a very short time frame, we had tons of curriculum. We even got an agreement with the production environment we use for claims handling to actually bring that technology into the classroom. So we're going to be able to introduce them to the claims management system right, when they learn for the first time about insurance. So it was a great partnership, a lot of learning on both sides. One of the things that I saw that was interesting is colleges always want to translate things into credit hours. And a lot of times the things we were doing, they couldn't get a handle on, well, how many credit hours? It's like, I don't really care how many credit hours it is, I'm more concerned about, can they do the things we need them to do and get the skills they need? So that was a little bit of a language barrier we had at first, but I think I've overcome that, and I think we both understand each other a lot better.
So just to get into the details a little bit, so when does the student actually develop the relationship with the Hartford? Is it first year of community college, second?
First year, so we want the person who's right out of high school, has never thought about going into this. We do quite a bit of a sell job with the college to let them know that we have tens of thousands of jobs that are going to stretch well into the future. And, oh, by the way, it might be claims today, but it could turn into a human resources job. It could turn into an IT job. It could turn into an underwriting job. So we're promoting ourselves as that gateway job to many other things you may want to do. And why not do it from the get-go? From the time that you step into that community college, let's aim you at this career.
So in the first year, they're taking courses that you have developed with the community college?
Correct. So some of them are around, people need some letter writing skills, so business writing is important. They also need, even though I have great performance support, some math skills, but they also need to know how to look at a contract and interpret a contract. Is the coverage there for the person to make a claim? Do I need to investigate this further? So we get them investigative skills. In essence, at the end of the community college time frame, they get an associate in insurance claims, and we have a curriculum with the institutes that's industry recognized that gives that associate in claims degree.
So when does the Hartford make the commitment to bring that person in as an apprenticeship into the company?
When do they get in a seat?
Right.
After about 9 months. So we do have a little bit of an upfront model. We're not putting people into seat the first day that they go to class, but we have about 9 months.
9 months of their first year in school.
Correct.
So they're actually working for the Hartford over the first year and throughout the second year of school.
Up through the 2,400 hours of entire apprenticeship curriculum.
Great. Have you had any graduates that have been placed at this?
So no, we're in our maiden voyage here, and I
Okay.
heard maiden voyage also. We have 12 people that are starting in Connecticut. May 22nd, we're having a signing ceremony for them, and we're kind of use it as a letter of intent type of approach. And then in Arizona, we're going to have 12 through Maricopa colleges starting again in June. So we're going into Florida, hopefully next year, and we're probably going to go into California the year after that. So,
Thank you. So one of the things that I think people here really want to learn about is how do they convince businesses to make this commitment? What is the argument that they need to make? Now, obviously, we've touched on some of them, the tightness of the labor market, the inability to find people with the skills, but what advice would you give to someone who is trying to convince a business person that this is something that they should look into seriously? Deb?
Well, first off, it's an investment in your future. I think everybody knows that there's a skill shortage, and the HR folks, I don't think you're going to get any of them to say it's not. I think upper management needs to understand the return on investment, that the times are that we have to invest. We have to take the time. It is our duty on top of it to give back. While there are some costs associated with it, especially if you are just starting up.
Sure.
We've never done this before, and I think most everybody is saying the same thing. Getting out there and talking to the other business partners, the schools, the economic development folks. But you have to put it down and say, if you don't invest, we won't have people to produce the product. You don't have people to produce the product, you're not going to have products. So therefore, you're not going to have a company.
Great. Stacey, do you want to add a little bit to that?
I think she said it really well, but I think the bottom line is we don't have a choice. Right now we've been backed into such a corner with the labor market and skilled training over so many years of telling our kids in this country that they have to go and get that 4-year degree. I think that's come home to roost a little bit. It goes back to the return on the investment. You always need to talk the bottom line, but you also need to talk about things like diversity. Most organizations, including ours, have goals for diversity and getting more persons of color, more women into these skilled trades. Veterans is a huge thing for us. You can tie your apprenticeship program into all of those goals in many different ways, and so if you can talk to them realistically about what company goals and company values that your apprenticeship program can help and assist with, it really it helps drive it forward.
And how do you think government could help in incentivizing businesses to do this? What could they do as well? I'll come back to you.
Well, I hesitate because I feel like I'm still learning everything that's offered. So I think for us, and just recently, we've been connecting with Jobs for the Future and really helping us bring a consistency, because it is so difficult when you have facilities scattered throughout the U.S. to really understand where are your resources. Things are different in every state, whether it's a federal, Office of Apprenticeship or a state-run program. Your resources are different, your contacts are different. There are different intermediaries in every state that you can partner with, and the schools are different. So I think for us, the biggest struggle that we've had over the first year was bringing a consistency and a single point of focus. So like a single point of contact that can help you in all those areas. We really felt like we were the blind leading the blind a little bit in our organization, trying to figure out, we were trying from, our little task force in a support role at corporate, we were trying to help lead our plants in all these states to say, here's who you need to contact for this, and here's, who can help you with that. And it was difficult. But I think that they've heard us, and I've heard, overwhelming commentaries from a lot of other organizations at the various functions I've been at, and I feel like the resources are coming together and it's getting better.
Great. Art, the building trades have been doing this for so many decades. So what advice would you give to folks that are trying to convince other sectors that they should get into it, like healthcare or transportation or financial services? What have you guys learned that would be applicable that they should think about when they're approaching the other business sectors to get them enthusiastic about apprenticeships?
Well, I think everything that's already been mentioned are key selling points. I think the return on investment is critical. I think this is the way to diversify and use the construction industry as a model for apprenticeship. That this is the way that we've been training the skilled workforce that's necessary for the industry, and that we have been able to keep up with technology, and we continue to upgrade our standards to meet the changing needs of the industry. And from the standpoint of gaining access to the critical workforce that is necessary, and controlling their costs, their unit costs, where they're supplementing the use of apprentices with their journey level workers. In the construction industry, it's extremely competitive. I'm sure it is in all industries, but that's a way of kind of containing costs, but continuing to train the workforce for the next generation. And I think the other thing is, the more employers that you can get into that pool is absolutely critical, so that the burden and the cost is shared across the board, because we're not going to be able to rely on government or on community colleges to develop the programs that are necessary. It has to be done by the industry, but it's difficult for just one employer. It's the economies of scale and have to be there, and that's we continue to share the burden of the cost.
It's a great point about, just one company trying to do it on their own. Deb, you're a small company. You said you got together with other companies. Tell us about how that process worked, how challenging and how rewarding it was.
Yes, it was very challenging as a small employer, and the other partners were also small employers. If it wasn't for the fact that we partnered with others, we wouldn't have been able to launch it, because we had to go out to the community. We had to go out to other employers. We tried to recruit more. In the end, you had to go to the schools. You had to meet with all the principals. You had to meet with all the counselors. You had to find your partners in the community. The time out of the office, 10 plus hours on top of what you just normally do, was very challenging. Yes, it was rewarding, because the response we received from the principals and the counselors at the high schools was tremendous. It said we needed to do it. There were a lot of children out there that were going to be graduating high school, didn't know what they were going to do after high school. There were some that said, yes, I'm going to a 4-year school. Great, but a majority of the students didn't know. The other factor was to meet with parents. It was amazing how many parents did not know what manufacturing meant today. Taking them and touring the facilities was time-staking, because you had to do it in the evenings and weekends. But at the same respect, there were a lot of parents that said, I had no idea that it was a clean environment, that it was a fun environment, that it was a skilled environment that they then felt that their children could prosper in.
So do you think that there could be an intermediary organization that could help you with some of this work, that could accelerate the acceptance and expansion of apprenticeships?
Absolutely. I think in order to make this scalable and to bring in other industries, you have to have that intermediary so they can build those resources. We only know what we know, and there's a lot more from a funding standpoint, from just an education standpoint. If the community college, I think I heard it, cannot meet your needs, what are some other training partners out there? So absolutely, that intermediary could be my subject matter expert that I can rely on to go out there and say, this is my issue. You can go out and say, this is your issue, and collectively it can be brought forth and be successful, and everybody comes out being happy.
That's great. That's great. Mark, since the financial services industry is such a new industry for apprenticeships. What advice would you give to those in the audience who are thinking about approaching industries that have not traditionally done apprenticeships? What would you say to them? It would be the arguments or the rationale that they should use with management to convince them that this is a good idea.
Well, I would start with, the first thing would be retention. So we all know that we have to retain our talent. And if most financial services or whatever industry look at their first year retention, it's usually not very good. So I see this, number one, as a retention play. The other thing is time to competency play. Can I get people up to speed quicker and faster so that I can get the jobs done that I need to be done? And, I see those two, as key issues. And then maybe a third one would be, how can you reduce your overall costs of learning if you partner, better? It's kind of interesting. It's like I've been in this world of preparing people to be claims representatives for a very long time. And the amount of infrastructure insurance companies have built around it to get people competent is amazing. The farmers ads, Farmers University isn't fictitious. It doesn't look like that. It doesn't have the nice oak walls, but many insurers have had to build these very ornate educational systems. It's like, enough. Partner better, get your skills into the learning system, and you'll be better off. You'll be more cost effective. So those three things are really important.
That's great. And thinking about the competency issue, do you guys use a competency-based model? Do students advance based upon the competencies that they've been able to be tested at, or is there a seat time involvement that you're focused on, number of hours rather?
So at the Hartford, we have put into place a badging system, believe it or not, internally. And these are core capabilities that we expect. So that has guided us, in our apprenticeship. So we have, a badge for innovation, data, leadership, communication, customer focus. And, all of those are things that we expect out of a person when they're in their first couple of years of employment. So those competencies have translated directly into our apprenticeship system. It's going to be interesting to see these apprenticeships getting these badges much quicker than a lot of people have been able to get them without the apprenticeship. So they already have a leg up.
That's great. Stacey, do you guys use a competency-based model in your apprenticeships?
Yes, we do. We, again, there's the different plants in our system have different variances on that, but yes, for the most part, it's a competency-based system.
And how do you test for that competency? How do you build that in?
So in the programs that are a little further along, it's really the partnership with the educational facilities and the community colleges. Because we like to use, it's kind of the hybrid time-based and competency-based.
Yeah,
and so our
yeah.
partners at the school will come in and evaluate the competencies for us in some of those programs.
How are the students reacting to that? Do they get motivated to learn faster because that it's not about the number of hours? I know it's a hybrid model, so it includes some hours, but.
Yeah, I think, of course, yeah, they do. And I think that just the passion for learning, we've seen an incredible passion for learning in our apprentices so far, and just really, an excitement to see how far they can go. And so, for the most part, our apprentices have outpaced our program even. So it's been really fun to watch them go and just, go as far as they can because, we don't want to be the part of the program that holds them back. So they've just been racing with it, and it's been really fun to watch.
Great. So in our last 5 minutes, I want to hit upon the importance of diversifying the talent pool, and I want to see how maybe each of you, Art has already touched on it, but maybe I can go back to Deb and talk about how what kind of steps you're taking to make sure that you have a pool that includes women and people of color in this apprenticeship pool of folks that you're working with?
Well, one of the things that I want to do is to get into the veterans and get into the out-of-school youth. We have not yet done that, but that is part of the next phase. You know, granted, looking at your high school students and getting your program down, and then reaching out and going to the other and I guess groups of individuals that you can source out and bring into the program.
Great, great. Mark, I would assume that Hartford probably has some diversity goals that it's looking towards, and so how are you using your apprenticeship model to do that?
Yeah, I mean, diversity is really important to us because we want our organization to reflect our policyholders. And this gives us, a great channel to be able to do that, especially when, we're partnering with places that we've never partnered with. So Capital College, who's my partner in Hartford, inner city community college. The professors and deans there know people that they think would be great for this program. And going through the interview process has just been amazing. I mean, even to see some of the backgrounds, wonderful to see like Outback Steakhouse, on the job of one of the people coming through the door, or Best Buy, or, any one of these other jobs that they know that, hey, I want to get a career going. And I think, the Hartford is a way to get a career launched. Much different than, oh, hey, you're a biology major, you might be good at insurance, So it's just been incredible to get that diversity of talent through the door. Working right now with 2 vets in Phoenix who want to launch a career. And that's always been a challenge for us, finding them. And right now I have 2, right at my doorstep.
That's great. That's great. Stacey, do you want to wrap us up here on this?
Sure. Really quickly, two of the big things for us. One is the veterans. And so one of the key takeaways that we learned early on was, as we got our programs registered in each state, to make sure to register also with the VA. And the other thing we're doing just recently is piloting in our Cincinnati plants a partnership with a corporation for Nehemiah for prior offenders, which has really caused us to go back and look at our hiring matrices and what we're ruling out as part of a background check. And so we're really trying to look at the the underserved population around Cincinnati and create a pipeline for folks who have offended in the past and have served their time and are ready to re-enter the workforce.
Thank you so much. Art, go
Fred,
ahead.
if I may, I know that we're out of time here, but I think it's absolutely critical from the standpoint of the construction industry that you asked a question earlier about the role that government can play. And I think that government agencies, local, state, and federal, are major construction users. And if you want to have a diversified workforce, you have to put in place policies and community standards that require the use of hiring of local residents, the apprenticeship utilization standards, so that we can get people into the pipelines, that we're targeting the communities of color, women, and our transitioning veterans and returning citizens. It can't happen by accident. Good faith has failed us miserably, so we have to put those standards in place, and we're being very successful around the country, especially in what we refer to as the MUSH sectors, the municipal projects, the universities, schools, and hospitals. And we're seeing with stadiums that are being built, we're putting standards in place, we're meeting them that include the use and requirement of emerging business enterprises, small business enterprises, minority and women-owned and veteran-owned companies. So we have to put standards in place with enforcement capabilities in order for us in the construction industry to achieve the goals that we've set for ourselves of diversifying the skilled workforce.
Thank you, Art. And I think a lot of the topics that we've covered here today will be covered in many of the breakout sessions. So I'd like to ask the audience to give our panel a round of applause and thank you. Thank you.